Robyn Drummond, welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I think the question I want to start with is, what is it that we need to know about your early life to understand the businesswoman and PT entrepreneur that sits in front of us today?
Oh, wow, that's a question.
Pretty broad.
Oh, wow. Okay. What, like about interesting about my early life? I mean, I don't think anyone's ever asked me a question like that before. Do you know what? I think that from I've always been someone that's been very determined and through sport was very disciplined. But I think interestingly, the first thing that does come to mind is the kid that rebelled against school, hated being there, failed absolutely everything, no single qualification, and being more like I wish someone had told me that I had ADHD when I was 8. Because I definitely like I'm now diagnosed with it. But I think
When did that happen?
what
When
the
did you find out?
diagnosis
Yeah.
really kind of at the start of COVID, interestingly, before the uprise of diagnoses, because I was studying physio again, like normal education, thought that I could go back and attempt to try and do something. And it was quite evident that I still really, really struggled. And it was through that experience that I always deep down knew there was something, but always joked about it to like friends and family.
Yeah.
But then obviously sought that out professionally and actually got the diagnosis, which was the best thing. So I think I was the person with the last say. I was the loudest person in the room. I never, was never scared to say how I felt. I definitely had the entrepreneur skills when I was wee, but how that presented was in an environment that wasn't facilitating those skills. It was more that I rebelled against it because it wasn't suited to my brain and the way I wanted to learn and work. So
I
yeah.
think that's a really, really interesting point, and it's one that comes up time and time again when I've spoke to entrepreneurs. And
Mhm.
I had Donald Cameron from Crypto Glasgow on not that long ago,
Oh,
and
nice. Yeah, yeah, I know who they are. Yeah.
we spoke about his ADHD, and I also listened to a podcast recently that had Will I Am on it, and he was speaking about his ADHD, and he refers to it as his superpower because growing up, going through school, you tend to find a lot of people that are labeled as ADHD or whatever really struggle within the school system because it has one way to deal with many children, and if you can't fit into that model, then quite quickly you'll find yourself ostracized through that process. And unfortunately, what happens for a lot of kids that get diagnosed quite early is they get medicated to fit into this mold, so they can be taught in the same way as other people. The system is not there to adapt to them, and that's the sad thing. And it was a point that Will I Am was making. He's like, you've got a classroom full of rocks, and if you had the ability to adaptively learn based on the way that these brains work for all the individuals, you could find some real diamonds in there. But the system is just not based for that, right?
No, it absolutely is not. It really isn't. And I think that like even so as I say, like I'd literally left school with like no qualifications. Then I mean, to be honest, I'd moved from Glasgow over to Fife at one point, and trying to transition into high school was really difficult. So like that did contribute to that as well. But then also not really having any kind of purpose in terms of like not really knowing what I wanted to do, but always was kind of into that like the fitness side of things. So when I'd revisited higher education, I have no idea how I managed to get into my master's degree, but I did somehow. It was almost like when, for example, like when I'd been on placement, it was placement that broke me and it was placement that led me to diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do things the way that everybody else did them, whether that be from, like writing notes as quick as other people. I definitely am dyslexic, but never really kind of went down that route. So there was lots of many things that like, that I definitely knew something wasn't quite right, that definitely led me there. But there definitely isn't. Like the system has failed a lot of people, and especially being female around an ADHD diagnosis as well, because almost like many females will go to the GP and explain how they feel, and it's often just been like, you've got anxiety or depression. So a lot of female have been misdiagnosed, and I think that's now leading to an uprise in diagnoses because there's more awareness around it. But it definitely, especially in females, gets missed a lot. But I, like, again, it is a complete superpower, and I chose to go down the medication route, hence why I sought out a private diagnosis. And it is one of the best things that I've ever done. Is, I mean, that's not me preaching medication, it's more like seeking out that diagnosis and understanding myself better so that I can work better has been the best thing.
Well, I think there's a fundamental difference. There's a difference in you as an adult
Oh yeah.
going through the process,
Mhm.
understanding yourself and how you function before and after, and making a conscious decision that medication is the right course for you. But the challenge for me is when it's kind of enforced on children to fit them in a box.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's other contributing reasons. I feel like I could go down that route, but I don't think I will. But there's other there's other reasons why parents will seek out diagnoses for young people. But I guess, that's come from someone that has ADHD, and wish I knew that I was, a bit more fully understood at a younger age. But I like that phrase in terms of like it being a superpower, because when it comes to business, you'll find that most entrepreneurs and business owners tend to have ADHD. Like, it's so common. And there's definitely like distinctive skills within these people that lead them to, to work the way that we do, or to think the way that we think, and to be successful. Especially like when I said to you about going to an app launch, like, I'm really hyper focused on this app launch, and that's what gets me really through it. So
Hyper focus is an interesting one, because I think that is quite a common theme within entrepreneurs and those with ADHD. Is you know a lot of the time, certainly growing up, when you're forced to do all this stuff that you maybe don't want to do, it's seen as disinterest on, or the ability to focus on a task, the inability to focus on a task. When the reality is, if you have a deep interest and passion for what you do, it can be that kind of superpower to hyper focus and be really engaged and achieve some great things through that process. So I've always found the idea that you don't fit into the mold, because when you do, you just end up living this boilerplate life of, you get the education, you go, you get a job, you work up through the ranks. A lot of people, just consume through their life trying to get the next step on their own, paying to the tax man, and life can be very structured and straightforward, whereas not fitting into that mold and seeing the world slightly differently can lead you down a much more interesting path.
absolutely. No, I totally agree. I actually, that way of life, it sounds like absolute hell for me. And to be honest, I lived it. Like, I worked in the gym, like from 2015 to 2020. Like, I never actually anticipated that I would even be self-employed, or like I was self-employed for a small bit, but like as in I taught a few fitness classes and was paid self-employed. But if I hadn't been for COVID, I definitely don't think, well, I never say never, but to be sitting here, attending conferences and talking on podcasts and like sharing my story, it's almost like I never anticipated that I would be doing any of this. So whether or not I was able to have the confidence to, to facilitate my own skills and what I was capable of, who knows, like, if that would have ever have happened. um but yeah.
Even before the move into fitness, though, you
Mhm.
were kind of, you did have a corporate job, right? You're involved in events and stuff like that. So was that something that was uncomfortable for you through that process? Was it something that never fully engaged you? Or what was the trigger point that forced this transition into fitness?
um So when I moved to Fife, I obviously went to college, and what's funny is I actually chose to study business management, and I always laugh
Mm.
about that when I share it, because I'm like, oh well, if only I stuck at it. And then when I actually did create a business, then I'd know how to run one. But I'd been to college, and I'd always kind of been into fitness. Like, I grew up fencing. Like, I competed in fencing. Whilst I feel like that was a sport that a family member had kind of put me into, I don't really feel like it was a sport that eventually, kind of when I got to the age of 15, 16, I didn't love it as much anymore. But I'd always been fairly active. It was kind of the only subject I was interested in school. moved over here, went to college, and it was that kind of point that the way that we grew up, or like the way that like my mum, we never had a lot of money, and I was just working in restaurants. Like I didn't have a lot of money, so I would never have been able to really seek out my fitness qualifications myself. So when college was able to give me a student loan, I took that opportunity and just went for it when it came to the fitness world. But it was at that time I then obviously like those qualifications had to be done online, so I had to work. I then went into events, which was working for the Royal Society of Edinburgh, which is mental because I don't even know how I even got that job, to be honest. And worked like I was meeting people like David Attenborough and that. Like it was totally
Wow.
wild. But the job was I was so miserable. Like I had that same like get up at 6, go to the gym, get on the bus, go to Edinburgh, come home, and that cycle repeated. And it was really truly awful. But I think what was more awful about it was that manager on site was a real dictator. Like I've never truly experienced that. It was really, really horrible.
Yeah.
So it was basically that point. It's the reason why I've got the tattoo Fortune Favours the Brave as well, because when I'd chosen to leave college, it was someone that said that to me in terms of like, well, to my family or anyone externally, like me leaving college just to go and do like an online fitness course seems crazy. Whereas I just did it and someone had said that Fortune favours the brave. Then it was when I'd then gone to the Royal Society of Edinburgh, I had then qualified as a level 2 gym instructor. Now that's not like that's just literally your entry qualification. And I'd seen a 0 hour contract locally in my leisure centre, and I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to do it. And again, I had that constant reminder being like, fortune favours the brave. I'm gonna sack off a 30 grand salary job at the age of 20 for a 0 hour contract because why? Because that was the logical thing to do. But um, again, I had a lot of judgment around me for making that decision. But again, I'm so glad I did that because one, because I was on a casual contract, I worked my absolute ass off to show them why I should be employed. But that
Yeah.
was my step into the fitness industry. And that was around kind of 2015. And I was employed really 15 to 20, really other like just between then. And that was really it for me at that point. And that was my leap into the fitness industry.
That's another one for me that tends to foster a lot of entrepreneurial spirits, because I see that even in some of the staff that we bring into our business, the
Yeah.
guys that seem to do very well have maybe come from these environments where their job is either heavily commission driven, or they've been on a 0 hour contract and they've had to make things happen to
Yeah.
get paid and ultimately to do well. And the upside opportunities there, but it does kind of foster that initial kind of entrepreneurial spark, because it's on you. You're taking full responsibility for your own income. You can't just sit back like many employees do on a salary and hide, and collect your pay. So, it's that in itself is a really good learning ground for what would later develop to a business, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I completely agree. Because at the end of the day, like I wanted to be the one that was getting more shifts, or I wanted to be employed. Like I wanted to be in this industry. So I definitely do think you show up differently. Like whilst obviously, like if you do like your job, you are going to work hard. But at the end of the day, I just left a very, very well paid job as somebody that didn't have any commitment. So was, had a good had a good monthly wage to
Yeah.
almost sack that off entirely to be like, choose me and I'm going to show you why. Um but again, that risk taken didn't really sit very well. But I think those were the two biggest risks that I had ever taken anyway, in terms of like, take the risk. And I think it gives you the confidence then to continue to take risks again when it comes to building a business, because the risks become larger, like bigger money decisions, it becomes more. So you need to have the confidence in your ability to take those risks. And that was the two significant ones that I often share, is that like, often when we take those risks or do hard things, good things do come off the back of it, for sure.
Absolutely. You kind of mentioned earlier that you'd done, or you'd started a business course, where you were at that time wasn't for you. And then obviously subsequently you started your own business.
Mm.
I tend to find like a lot of people really learn the most when they're implementing, right? And I go back to my own experiences. I went to university for 4 years to do kind of finance, done a master's. It, like I remember starting my first week, I worked for an oil and gas company in finance originally, and I started my first week, and they handed me over this massive pile of documents and said, right, this is our Russian branch. Can you prepare the accounts for it? And I was like, where the fuck do I start? I've just been through 4 years of university, and then I've done a master's,
Literally.
and they've just handed me something practical to do, and I'm like,
Yep.
fuck. So I literally had to go through the last 4 year accounts and figure out how to do it. And that's why I think a lot of people put a little bit too much emphasis on having these courses and qualifications on the front end, where the baptism of fire really comes in the doing, right? And that's where you earn your stripes.
Definitely. And I think I even like, when the Living talks about my journey, I always say, like, your first podcast will be shit, like your first live's going to be shit, your first everything's going to be shit. And I think that, we can spend so long doing courses and learning, whilst it's obviously like there's things that are applicable. I then was forced into a situation when obviously kind of COVID came around, and I'd scaled a business very, very fast and almost was managing a lot of money, that I had no choice but to I had to learn. So I had to literally learn by doing. And even now, I stopped doing as many, like I've done what I've needed to do, and that's not me sitting here being like, oh, I know everything, because I absolutely single-handedly don't, and there's so much to learn. But in terms of like, yeah, as you say, you can sit for 4 years in education. Like for me, sitting there doing that business course, I was like, I've got nothing to apply this to. Like I have no interest in doing this. Or accountancy. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I should listen, but never mind. But like at that time, I had nothing to apply it to. Whereas because I found something I'm like really interested in, and I didn't have a choice. I had to learn. So, yeah, just literally.
That is the big switch for a lot of people that find their passion is learning just becomes enjoyable.
Yeah,
It's just something that drives you every day. You want to know as much as possible about the subject that you're passionate about.
absolutely.
And that's something that seems to get lost in the education system. It's like the amount of completely disengaged teenagers that I see just now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, directionless, really just going through the motions because they're told that's what they have to do. It's sad, and versus you see some other kids. And in my head, I'm thinking about my stepkids here because, I've got one kind of 15-year-old teenager who has no direction at all of what he wants to do in life. And, it's just about computer games and, no passion, versus his sister who's, completely obsessed with horses and, has her life planned out around that. And she wants to be an instructor, and she's just been fortunate enough to find the passion that she can put it into that's out with the kind of strict environment of school, but school's not really doing anything to support you through
No,
that.
I completely agree. I think it's that it kind of goes back into that ADHD conversation. It's not facilitating, people's skills. And interestingly, in the budget that was discussed last week, I'm not 100% like like fact check me, but there has been a cut in young enterprise funding. So when it comes to entrepreneurs, there was a qualification in school that young people could do when it was in relation to entrepreneurs in Scotland. I don't know if this
Yeah,
is the UK, but that is and will be cut, which I think is absolutely obscene. Because again, that was an opportunity for people to learn well, I don't know if you can really learn, but for people that really wanted to go down that route, it was there to facilitate that. Whereas like I feel like that was a massive step backwards. But yeah, I think definitely in schools for sure. And I think that's why there is so many disengaged people. We need to 100% be facilitating those interests. Definitely.
I'm really beyond concerned about the direction that the UK is going in just now.
Mhm.
And obviously, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, they've got the budget tomorrow, and a lot of the kind of stuff that have been putting out there in terms of preparation of tax increases and certain focuses. He made a statement that people that own assets are not workers.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
you're a business owner, so you own an asset of a business, and you're not a worker apparently, and that is an extremely concerning statement. But then also to be stating very shortly thereafter that the big focus of this budget is to restart the UK economy and get things in growth. Well, how is that going to come without entrepreneurship and people starting businesses, etc.? And all of the tax changes they're talking about are going to attack that. We seen a situation last year where about 9,500 millionaires left the UK because tax is getting very high. And now you say, okay, they're millionaires, who cares? We're more interested in, the average person having a better life. Well, if they are the employers of people, they are the guys that are creating business and an economy and hiring people and growth of jobs, then it is a big issue, and it's we're a little bit scared about where it's going. Tomorrow, I guess, is going to be a big day for that. But not support young entrepreneurs when we're already in a system that is just designed to pump out employees out of the school system.
Yeah.
There needs to be at least a percentage of the population that's pushed towards entrepreneurship, and
Absolutely.
they're doing very little towards that.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the kind of we're kind of at the point where you've been through your education in fitness and you started your 0 hour contract. How did we get from there to Robyn Drummond Fitness and the business that you have today?
So when I had just worked in the leisure centre, I had, as I say, I'd kind of stepped back from my employed role after 5 years due to just a lack of progression being available. I just had done some fitness classes on a self-employed basis. It was basically really at the start of the pandemic in 2020 when I actually had gone into the NHS for a very brief time and then did my self-employed. January 2020, obviously kind of COVID happened and a lot of uncertainty obviously around what we were able to do. So I think, what was it, by March? Was it March that really, to be honest, everything started to close down?
March 15, 16, 17, something like that. I
Yeah,
remember it very vividly because at the
same.
time, and this was before I went full time into my own business,
Mm.
I was working in Texas,
Oh,
and
really?
I was still traveling back and forward.
Nice.
But I remember sitting in the hotel in the morning in Texas, and I was flying out back home to the UK in the afternoon, and there was a lot of kind of buzz around the restaurant, and the television was on, and Trump was out making a speech.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the start of, right, we're locking everything down. So I was maybe like a day away from not being able to get out of the US to get back
Wow.
to the UK. And then I ended up back in the UK for 2 years, like still doing that job that was Texas based, but doing it remotely for 2 years. And then after that, I kind of used COVID to build my business, and
Yeah.
I never went back. But yeah, middle of March is very strong date in my head.
Yeah, and it was March because then the leisure centre had basically simply asked me, would I go online for them? And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I'm too anxious and I'll never do it. I had put Joe Wicks on the TV and I almost was like, this is atrocious. Like, I am not going to be like, I can't follow exercise like this, or I can't teach online. Like, I've never done anything like this before. And essentially, I had a small group of women who had come to my classes that I had on WhatsApp, and I just was like, do you know what, ladies, let's just have a Zoom quiz. Like, let's just meet the 20 of us. I'd created a free Facebook group at the same time and thought, well, at least then that allows me to stay in contact with them. However, I quickly was like, well, do you know what? I'm losing £300 a month from my self-employed classes. Why don't I just charge them a tenner? And at this point, I thought, wow, like, I've made something that people are going to pay me money for. And I thought, this is pretty cool. And honestly, I cannot even tell you how buzzing I was that people were paying me £200. Like, I thought this was the coolest thing that ever happened to me. And basically, very quickly, because I suppose there wasn't any other options for people, I guess I took for granted the reputation I'd created in the leisure centre, but people had just started to tell their friends about it, been like, oh, Robyn's charging this service for a tenner, she's doing live workouts, giving recipes and talking about her own diet experience and whatnot. And then like one person would just tell the next, and it completely organically grew. I don't think I did my first paid ad until last year. And I had grown to 1,000 members within 8 months. So, it doesn't take people very long to work out. I then had like a 10K minimum business a month with no overheads, by the way, because I was filming from my attic in my house. So at that point, I was still very much like, I dragged my best friend into it because I didn't have a choice. People were doing bank transfers. Like, I had no CRM, I had no email software. I literally had a Facebook group, and that's how I ran my entire business for about a year.
I mean, that's an incredible level of growth in a short period of time.
Crazy. It was
I,
crazy.
what also, you know, makes me think a lot about humans, is just that, your health and well-being is like the number one most important thing, right? If you've not
For
got your
sure.
health, you've not got anything. However, it seems to be the bottom of the pile for
Mm.
so many people. So much so that it took COVID and the rest of the world becoming quiet, the fact you couldn't go out, there was nothing else to do, for people to then start thinking, okay, well, maybe I should start thinking about my health.
Mhm.
It's like, how mad is that as a species? Our fundamental survival, looking after ourselves, is so far down the list. It takes something like COVID, where there's literally nothing else you can do, to start addressing it.
Yeah,
Mad.
literally. I know. It's totally crazy. Even still now, I definitely don't think people place enough value on it. I think a lot of the time it's because there's so much shit and there's so much noise like online about what people should do. And
Yeah.
then I don't like I use the word holistic a lot, but I think it's because I have a very, again, what's normal, but like a normal approach to this. Like, I was someone that toxically dieted at a young age. Like, I put myself in really stupid positions, took illegal fat burners, like dieted ridiculously stupidly, and did all this stuff. And I think then I think, interestingly, I think what the eye-opening moment for me was because I actually did do 6 months in the NHS, redeployed during COVID, and I was in the care of the elderly sector. And almost like my role was to help people regain independence again. It wasn't like support work where people need permanent care. It was almost like, well, that person's had a fall or an illness, but they want to get back to normal day life activities. So when you actually see people not return back to normal and their health completely deteriorating, you almost go, well, exercise is one of those things I can't see how it's going to benefit me now, but what will my future self thank me for? And I think when I basically did that small, stint in the NHS, I think it changed a lot for me, albeit I'd been in fitness for 6 years prior to that. I think it's almost like, yeah, we've, even with being female, with my hormone changes as I get older, my bones can become, weak, and I'm more susceptible to fractures. I can't reverse that process. I can't fix it when it happens, but I can prevent it from happening. It's the same with like, cardiovascular disease. So these things are things that like we can't cure, well, when we've got it, but we can certainly prevent it from happening. So, I think with my attitude towards health and fitness is it's very like in the middle. It's very normal. It's not excessive. It's like, what's the bare minimum we can do to meet that criteria? And again, it's always like, what would your future self thank you for? Like, you've got two options. You'll either be carrying your shopping from the car yourself, or you'll be assisted into the bath because you can no longer clean yourself.
I,
So
I I think that's probably one of the things that had the biggest impact on my perception of exercise and health, was that, the statistics around a lot of mortality in later age
yeah.
generally boiled down to one thing, which is lack of mobility,
Oh yeah.
because all of the issues with cardiovascular issues, a lot of the health complications you're going to see in elderly age come from the ability that you just can't get about the same way as you used to. So I've always thought about that more in terms of sort of, building the muscle around your legs, and being, continually active. I also look a lot more at sports that are supposed to be good for longevity. So, I
Mhm.
remember reading an article about tennis being, really, if you can keep up tennis into your later years, then it's really good for supporting longevity. And
Mhm.
it's probably, obviously, turning 40 this year. I'm a lot more mindful about that sort of
Mhm.
stuff, and um, that's been something I've started implementing. I play quite a bit of tennis. I forced myself to go to the gym and do weights sessions, even though I'm not that particularly interested in it. I understand the importance of building muscle because it helps maintain that mobility as you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to take more focus away from more focus onto health and take less away from like how we look and aesthetics all the time. Like, whilst obviously that's a bonus. But from a like a longevity perspective, like, do you want to be able to run with your kids? Like, do you want to, like prevent having, I don't know, deterioration in your brain? Do you want dementia? What's the alternative if you don't exercise? Do you know? I feel like that's how I scaremonger my clients. I'm like, what's the alternative then? So but yeah, so I guess that's that's where it all started.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about supporting women with their health journey
Yeah.
because clearly that's your focus. And I did have a look at some of the statistics on this stuff, and it's notable that this is an area that needs focus and it needs support because there's a lot of women that are just not comfortable going out there and exercising or just don't have the time to do it. And coincidentally, I think it was Women's Health done this survey and they said like, the majority of women say they don't exercise. About 74% say they don't exercise because of lack of time.
Yep.
And it's about 35 say it's because of lack of self-confidence. But men's perception is the opposite. The highest cause of women not exercising is lack of confidence. But in reality, it's time. What do you think the biggest challenges are in terms of getting women in from your experience?
I think well, those two definitely. I'd say definitely confidence because it's again, I think it's why I was like hugely passionate when people used to walk through the door and come in for a gym induction. Gym instructors almost had that attitude, being like, oh my God, I've got another gym induction to do. Whereas I'd see like a 40-year-old female come in, not have a clue about anything. You could tell how intimidated she was by that experience. And I almost, for every single person that did that, almost wanted to make sure they left feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
I think confidence, yes, time, absolutely. But I actually, honestly, hand on heart, like this is where I really truly believe that people can no longer afford to have high-end memberships anymore. And I think that at times people will use money as an excuse. And I unfortunately, the niche that I have and the people that I serve, I actually surveyed people and I actually asked them if they would be comfortable sharing their annual salaries with me. And as a completely anonymous, as a bit of anonymous research we did, and it was actually frightening. Now, I've had, most clients that I work with obviously are women. They'll be either stay-at-home mums or part-time workers. They'll be single mums. They may be on a part-time salary and obviously get benefits from the government. So they don't have a lot of income that they can
Disposable
bring
income.
on themselves. I have worked, like I've had certain situations where some women then don't want to ask their other partner, but like, can I go to the gym or can I do this? It's almost like, well, why do you want to do this? I've had real terrible situations in that respect. But I think financially, and I think it's because the service and the product that I deliver is so low cost. I am hugely passionate about keeping it at that cost because I see that people do struggle with, for example, like my Bannatynes locally to me is about 65, £70 now. If you were
Yeah.
to go to like David Lloyd's in Edinburgh, you're talking like 150 to 175 a month.
Yeah,
And
even the one in Hamilton, that's my gym. It's at the bottom of the street. So I think it's about 120 quid
yeah,
for the membership.
I think financials definitely come into it. I think that time is time at 100%. I think all three. Time definitely. And again, that's why I try and solve that problem through workouts and information that's digestible in like real small bites. So my workouts are like 15 minutes and 30 minutes. Um, Everybody's really busy. Again, I have seen hundreds of women come to me who'll be like, like for example, one of my clients right now will literally get up. Obviously, she's got 3 kids. It's in her role to obviously get the kids sorted, get the kids to school. Then she's got to go to work, like say 9 till 2, come home, walk the dog, then go get the kids from school like 3:30, 4, get everyone ready, like dinner ready, then after school clubs, and then come
There
home.
really isn't a lot of time.
And
There
I'm
really
asking that
isn't.
client to exercise. Like I'm like, well, why are you not doing it? Do you know, and
Yeah.
that's a reality for a lot of people. Um,
But the reality there is what you're asking them to do is to take time for themselves, because if they don't take time for
100%.
themselves on the front end, they're going to have to take it when they're sick on the back end, and it affects everybody,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a big challenge of just resetting the mindset of how they look at it. Is like, if you
Yeah.
don't look after yourself,
Yeah.
then you're not going to be able to look after all these other people that you're responsible for day in day out.
100%, definitely. So I think that's why, for me, trying to provide a solution is important, that people can still take that time for themselves. Whilst if someone is struggling with lack of confidence, it doesn't almost play into it, but it's certainly like, if I can get someone who doesn't move to move more, to feel confident in how to do a squat, a lunge, and a press at home, then they might go to the gym. But there's no, you don't need to go to a gym. Like,
Yeah,
it's not a thing you have to do. Um, so it ultimately is that. So it's like, if you don't look after yourself, it's like, how do you show up for your family? Like, how do you show up for your kids? How do you show up for yourself? Like, how does that change? You know, when we don't exercise, mentally we feel terrible. You know, do you care less about yourself? You're not productive with the work that you do. You know, you might be a bit more miserable at home. So yeah, it's a bit of a vicious circle for a lot of people, from time and money. I think I definitely solve the confidence problem because it gives people a solution at home, but
yeah.
time and money are a huge problem.
It's, for me, I think as well. I think you see with fitness and health, or issues with getting to the place you want to be with your fitness and health. It comes from, a lot of mindset issues, or a lot of past traumas where, you've got fundamental issues in your head that you need to overcome. But I think particularly when it comes to the diet side of it, right? Because you can
Yeah,
do the exercise part of it. It will
yeah,
help you feel better,
yeah.
but in terms of your long term health, you really need to nail some sort of balanced diet.
Mhm.
And the amount of people I see fail time and time again on this because they've not fixed the underlying issue is just baffling. So is that something that you feel like you can help with through the process? Is that, or is it still a big challenge for people who do get the first bit right and start exercising?
I think exercise is the easy bit. Exercise is honestly like, because for example, like I could just set you up a program and you just press start and you just do what I tell you to do, really, essentially. Like, it's the easy part. Well, some people could argue that if you're not motivated, it can be hard. But other than that, when it comes to nutrition, like, that's a whole new mindset shift. Like, this is probably where my interest lies the most, is the nutrition element, purely because many people and many women will have gone to numerous diet clubs, which
Yeah,
is why I started my second business that I've kept quiet. But it's like years and years and years of diet clubs, years of numerous fad diets. Like, we had, what was it, Special K trying to promise us that we could lose weight from a bowl of cereal, which is
yeah,
absolutely um
mad.
had all these diets. So it's like, there's been so much conflict and information for so many years. Even I grew up with a family that went to, diet clubs, that really impacted then me as a young person and how I perceive myself. But it's a huge problem, but it certainly can be fixed. But the problem that people see is, when I definitely sell the unsexy side of, like, the diet and fat loss, because it's the real way to do it. But people almost perceive it as the longer way, whereas it's actually taking people less time by investing time to learn how to do it properly, than stopping all these fad diets all the time that's not serving them well at all.
It,
So
it is definitely the hardest thing for me. And the more I read about it, the more I learn about it. I like listening to Diary of a CEO, but I've kind of tuned out a little bit recently because
yeah, I would
every week there is a health expert on it, and every week the advice gets more and more complicated and more contradictory, and my head is pickled with it. It's like I don't know what's good and what's bad now. It's got that confusing, and then you think, okay, well, just strip it right back. If you closer you eat to the earth, you know, with fresh fruit and veg and all that has to be good. But then you get into the whole, okay, you're buying fruit and veg at the supermarket, is it full of pesticides? You know, why have we always got the same looking type of tomato? When you go to Spain, they've got all these beautiful fruit and veg that taste and look different. It's a minefield. And you get to the point where you're just so bamboozled with it, you know, you just stick to what you've been doing because you don't know where to go from here, you know?
Yeah, literally. I'll not say too much, but there's a lot of very controversial of information on that podcast that I would definitely say is when it comes to the best. I'm here on top of someone else's podcast. Listen to Lane Norton because that will really help on his podcast. Like that's a really, really good listen. Lane Norton definitely basically stood up for pretty much what we preach all the time. And it summarizes it really, really great. And he's a great I think he's got a PhD and whatnot. But anyway, I think it's like even when I sit and think about the clients I have, some people don't have a choice. So, for example, some people have to have the cheapest option because it's the only choice that they have. And I think that that's actually for a lot of people the case. We don't have the privilege and luxury to choose organic or choose, you know, grow stuff grown in a certain way. So it's almost like I don't even get to those conversations with people because a lot of people that I work with are skipping breakfast, they've got overeating problems, they're binge eating at night time, they're skipping lunches, they, you know, they have no real education. So it's about kind of creating that there is no good and bad food. It's always about trying to have a balanced mindset or a healthy mindset towards food. And you know, it is okay to have a gin on a Friday if you want to have one. And it's about the more permission you give yourself to eat, the less of a problem it becomes. So the more things that you think are bad, the bigger rules that you're applying to yourself. So you're going to rebel harder. You're going to want the things you say you can't have. When we give ourselves the permission to eat and to do those things, it doesn't become a big deal. So for example, if you had a problem with chocolate and you're like, I'm going to cut chocolate out my house, I would tell you to do the opposite. I'd be like, I want you for 7 days to eat chocolate every day. Because honest to God, by 7 days, you'd be like, I don't eat chocolate anymore. Which you don't believe me.
Yeah.
But it becomes less of a big deal. So, you know, that's why we really need to, the more permission you give yourself, the less restriction occurs and the more likely you are to fix your relationship with food. And that's the work that I do and love the most because so many people are fucked off so many diets. Like it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It's always been, I think anytime I've done, you know, I went to a PT for about a year and I was making, always been pretty good at doing the exercise bit of it, but the diet thing is just where I you know, continually fail. Um,
It's
eh,
because it's not set up for, it's not set up for you. That's the difference. Like when I did many diets, it was like, here's a meal plan. It was like, here's a meal plan that I've decided that's subjective to my likes and dislikes. Whereas now I actually strip back away from tracking and calories. Like I'm that takes a lot of confidence as a coach and PT to try and coach people like that. The only reason that people constantly give calories and macros is because people only know that. People don't know how to coach people without it. So it's almost like your family favorite meals are the best meals for you because it's what your family likes. What's wrong with chili con carne? What's wrong with fajitas? What's wrong with having a Sunday dinner? Like these are the best meals that you could have. But yet it's almost like we think that there's some sort of magical food when it comes to diet and there isn't. There's no magic solution at all to these things. So when you know PTs are so good at just being like, here's a meal plan, it's like chicken and rice, only eat this, you're restricted to this, your calories are low, this is all you can do, this is what causes the problem. Nobody's taught how to actually prepare a meal, nobody's taught how to meal plan, nobody's taught how to budget well and actually shop well for you and your family.
yeah.
At such an important time. So that's the deeper work that I try and do because it matters the most beyond calorie track. I mean, I do use it with clients, but
Focus on supporting them to be able to help themselves and build,
that's
build, build,
what it's
build their
all
own
about.
path.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned earlier that the Robyn Drummond Fitness, you've got a new app coming out that you're just about to launch. Tell me a bit about that and how you're going to be supporting all these women through their fitness and health journey.
So it's a bit of a relaunch to our current app. So I rebranded the business from what was Robyn Drummond Fitness to Thrive with Robyn at the start of the year, although I don't like the with Robyn, so it's just Thrive.
Right.
I rebranded it at the start of the year. I came into a lot of personal problems, that basically shit hit the fan, and I probably neglected that rebrand hugely. I did, and I put my hand up and admitted it. So the main purpose of this relaunch on Friday is purely to respark my community again, because there was hundreds of members there, and I, as I say, neglected it quite a lot. But the new additions will be more structured exercise programs. It takes the decision making away from somebody, especially when you're subscribing to something at a low cost. You're almost like you'd be as well just going on YouTube at this rate. That's how I compare my app at the moment. So whereas now it's almost like, well, here's your dedicated program for you. I'm just having a bit of entertainment through the new recipes, and I'm doing like Thrive in the kitchen because it's given tea in the park. I've got my little branded apron to do more videos with me, that it's not just like, here's another PDF fucking recipe book, like which all coaches give their clients. I'm like, hi, this is me, and I'm going to teach you why you should add 2 eggs to your bit of toast in the morning, because you should be eating protein. And basically, it's just a bit of that, which more people need. People don't have a clue when you just give them a recipe book. Like, they don't understand why they're doing something. But my idea is to give people the cost of meals, so trying to make it really budget friendly, make it less ingredients as possible, super family friendly. And that's the biggest additions to that. So yeah, I think as I say, shit hit the fan at the start of the year, and this is hopefully a little way to reignite that on Friday with the relaunch of the app. So fingers crossed that pays off, hopefully.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
What do you think is next? Do you have a vision for the business and where you want to take it in the future?
In terms of, I suppose in the short term, I think for me, it's about like trying to rebuild that community again is absolutely priority, because my retention strategy was poor, the onboarding element was poor, the inside of things was poor. So I think the initial plan is to scale that again. Trying to get in front of more people, trying to get better at sales and marketing and whatnot. However, I decided to create a second business, as you do, quite a few months ago, but kind of kept it quite on the down low, and it's called the Nutrition Club. And essentially, that is a face-to-face element of me trying to make the world a bit of a better place when it comes to fat loss in their communities, because
Okay.
I disagree with the way that certain clubs are run. They harm relationships with food, they're scale weight focused, they're causing problems with body image. So my second business is, I'm the one that's running the clubs at the moment, quietly,
Yeah.
and people know about it, it's all over socials. But the idea is that then I can try and develop it within each community, especially in Fife to start with. And it's basically your ongoing monthly meetups that are fat loss focused, that improve your relationship with food and body image, that teach people how to actually eat well and not actually hate themselves in the process.
In a much more positive way.
Yeah,
Do
that's
do you, do you see that as a business that you could potentially scale through like a franchise model, or we're not quite at that point yet where we're thinking about the next
I'm
major step?
not sure. I think that that's currently how other businesses run theirs.
Mm.
Um, it's that whole like, well, let's not reinvent the wheel. At the moment, I don't know, because, professionals deserve to be paid correctly, especially if they're running my sessions. So it just depends. I don't know. I don't know if, for example, right now it's actually a really good leads magnet, you could say, for me to get my name out there even more, in terms of like, because the businesses are separate, it's almost like, well, people that have never met me in Five, for example, are learning about the app, which they never knew about. So for me at the moment, it's a good lead generator for sure, but the long term wise at this stage, I don't know, because I don't really, to be honest. So I need to, we're running two at the moment, and I need to slowly just kind of gradually keep adding.
Expand as it makes sense to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, and then really take it from there. But I definitely believe it's scalable, and potentially profitable, which is exciting. So
Yeah.
and hugely impactful at the same time. So, you know, whatever.
It's something you believe in as well, ultimately, which is going to
100%,
drive you passionate.
massively.
Yeah. Cool. Um, Robyn, for any woman that's listening out there that's maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed and unsure how to start a fitness and health journey, what would your advice be?
Do something that you enjoy, because we make better decisions when we feel good. So I think, you know, do the things that make you feel better first before you start to think about anything too, you know, in depth. So that might just be beginning to walk daily, you know, for 15 minutes, listening to a funny podcast. It might be it might be actually prioritizing more self-care at night time, that you have better sleep quality. So do things that, you know, read a book that you've not read for a while, whatever it may be, to protect your health and well-being, to start feeling good before you start to go like hell for leather into a new, like really, you know, big exercise program. I think caveat to that is, you know, health and well-being doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be crazy, it doesn't have to be intense. It can be, you know, it can be just a couple workouts per week. It can just be from going for a 30-minute walk a day, but just do more of what you enjoy, because we make better decisions when we feel better. Yeah, so that's the first thing. That's not to say join a fitness app like mine, or you might want to. I'm joking. I'm just kidding. Join my app. Kidding on. But like, it could be playing tennis, as you say. It could be gardening more, obviously in the summer. It could be, you know, meeting up with it for a walking group. It could be trying to do your first park run, whatever it may be. Just do more of what you enjoy, because you're more likely to continue it. You see it less of a chore, and you make better decisions, i.e., you eat better. So yeah,
And
and motivation comes from action. We have to stop relying on motivation just as a whole, because people are always like, oh, you know, I'm not motivated. And I'm like, you're telling someone that's got ADHD that doesn't produce dopamine that you're not motivated. Like, good one. Good joke. Like, I don't feel sorry for you. Um, like, motivation comes from taking action. So whether that action be 5 minutes to get you going, then that's all you have to do. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
it's just avoiding that whole self-sabotage thing we do where you feel like to make any real impact you're going to have to change like 10 things at once and do all this exercise and completely reshape your diet and do 10 hours exercise or whatever a week, and the reality is it's not. It can start with simple changes, and you go there gradually.
Yeah, definitely.
um Robyn, the last question I always ask on the podcast is, what does real wealth mean to you?
I think it means having like, it depends. I was gonna say, is that almost like having a rich life? I guess that's so specific to every single person. For me, I think that's the fact that I get to wake up every day. I would say that I have a rich life. Well, figures don't look like that right now. But it's that I get to wake up every day with that element of freedom. I can choose to do whatever I want whenever I want. I, you know, ultimately have the choice to be anywhere in the world whenever I want to be. And I would say that, you know, I'm the luckiest, richest, wealthiest person because I have that choice. So I wouldn't even bring financials into that. I think it's more of the, you know, my highest value is definitely freedom. So I think that, yeah, I think that that's what it means to me anyway, because, you know, I went through a period of time where I tried to fit the box of, you know, of society, and, you know, I don't fit into the mold. Like, I don't fit the mold. Like, I don't fit in. I never have. Whereas now I get to just be me and do whatever I want in the way that I want it to be. So yeah, I say that that's what it means to me anyway.
When you've
Um,
had an experience like you did in the events company where you've got a horrible boss that
oh
makes your
yeah.
life hell, it is incredible how much that can affect your mental health in the long term. And to wake up every day knowing that you set the rules is just really, really freeing, really invigorating, and drives a lot of passion.
Definitely, because I will most definitely never go back to that environment. I've had a few situations in life where like have felt very like controlled and restricted and stuck. So I think when, you know, you break free of that, especially like personal life, and then work life, it's almost like, I feel like the most freest I've ever felt, and I get to make that choice every day. I think I show up even better for that, because I'm like, I'd never want to go back there. But yeah, I say that I have the richest life because I have that freedom. I think then financials is a bonus, 100%.
Well, it tends to go hand in hand. You know, when you're
Mhm.
doing something you're passionate about, you put a lot of effort in, a lot of work, you're thinking about it all the time. It's something that you're passionate about driving forward, and usually the money follows eventually.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so if anybody wants to find out more about Thrive and the new app launch, how can they get in touch, see your socials, etc.?
I am on both Instagram and Facebook. It's probably the easiest place to touch base with me. I am Thrive with Robyn on Instagram and just Robyn Drummond over on Facebook. So I am more than happy to connect with anyone if they would like to get involved with Thrive, for sure. Or the Nutrition Club if you're over my way.
Excellent. I'll get the guys to link those in the show notes anyway. Robyn Drummond, thanks a lot for joining us on Real Wealth Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Stop.